J-Dog, easy play, anytime, stop, nada, much. Slayer Boxer, C, Bisu, Savior, 16 of the most powerful StarCraft gamers in the world. LG, Intel Centrino, Calm TV, Star Invitational.
Indeed, we're now in the quarterfinals. Anytime versus Much. There is Much now in the booth. A powerful Protoss player who went 3-0 in his group with ease, might I add. Even taking out J-Dog. Ranked 18th in Kespa. Not the highest ranked player here, but certainly not the worst. He is a very, very smart player. I gotta say, I think because he's not actually playing a Zerg, as we can see in the scouting report, which I believe is just supposed to be like fun facts for the tournament. He's not that great against Zerg, but that doesn't really matter because he's now playing AnyTime, who's a Protoss. I think this is going to turn out to be an exciting match. I love casting Protoss versus Protoss. There's AnyTime. Someone said on the forums he looks like Anton Sherd. From No Country for an Old Man. For old men, excuse me. Ranked 10th in Kespa. A teammate of J-Dong's. Many players believe that J-Dong might have thrown his match just so he didn't have to play this guy. But it didn't matter because J-Dong ended up losing to Flash. We saw in the previous games Flash versus J-Dong, really exciting games there as well. Now, I think, well, it's really tough for me to pick a favorite here. They're both very, very strong. AnyTime and Much. I'm a big fan of both of them. I'm a Protoss player myself, so I spend a lot of time studying players like these two. When we get the queue, we will be starting the game very soon. Head-to-head, Much versus AnyTime. They've actually both joined the games now. And they are both set to go, so we are waiting for the commentators to give us the cue to start. The game has begun. Much at the bottom left. And that would make AnyTime at the top right. A one-on-one map. We could see some interesting builds. We've already seen a ton of interesting builds on this map already. And in this tournament already, we've seen heavy macro-oriented builds. We've seen these insane all-in rush builds as well. And in reality, we could see either in a matchup like this one. First pylon for Much in his main, and that looks like it's going to be the same for AnyTime. This is an indicator generally that we're not going to see anything that's going to be too much of an aggressive rush. Had we seen the pylon in the middle of the map, well, we would assume that it's going to be more of a proxy rush. Both players likely to go one gateway on this map, although I have seen a few pros that go two gateway. The issue with going two gateway is that if your rush fails, you're very susceptible to a counter rush once the Dragoon range finishes. Looks like Much will be scouting earlier than AnyTime. This is usually a sign that AnyTime is confident with his build regardless of what type of build his opponent is doing because he's not that interested in scouting him. So, in other words, AnyTime's build, it seems, is going to be versatile versus almost all openers. Much as might be more dependent on what his opponent does. But a second gateway now. Very interesting. So it's going to be a 2-gate versus a 1-gate. Notice he did make the cybernetics core already. We may not even see a Zealot. for Much. So again, here we go. It looks like AnyTime's going to be doing the 2-gate rushing, while Much is doing the defensive move early on here. He needs to get his probes into gas as soon as possible, otherwise he will not be able to get the Dragoons out with the Dragoon range. So he'll be pretty susceptible early on to the Zealot rush. It's going to be up to how well he can control his Dragoons and how well he can keep his probes alive. He did opt to get one Zealot out there, so that means he has sacked at least a few probes to get the first Zealot out. The Zealot will be very helpful, though, in holding off the initial rush, especially if he can hide that Zealot within the mineral patches and use that with the support from the probes. Cybernetics core. So it looks like such a build from AnyTime was more of a preliminary rush that then followed up with a fast tech. Note that he's going to have his second gateway out before Much will. Much now put in a defensive position, but perhaps too much of a defensive position. AnyTime's goal is going to be the probes. Much is aware of that. If he can get a few probes, AnyTime will be in the lead. Here he's going in for the probe kill now. No, he's not. He's going to weave around to the back here, attacking this probe. Now, it looks like that was a complete and total waste of a Zealot on AnyTime's part. Although he did force his opponent Much to make a Zealot himself, which was a bit of a probe sacrifice anyways. So now AnyTime, while he is down a Zealot, which was a good 100 minerals, he does have his second gateway out sooner. Note that Much is still scouting around, watching very vigilantly as to what his opponent's doing so he can respond accordingly. Here come the Dragoons of AnyTimes now, want to take this probe out. It looks like this probe will be isolated into the corner. If he can get it around, it would help him out a lot. And no, he will not. Much moving his Dragoons around the map to try to spot any other scouting probes that might be there. I've also seen some Protoss players who like to hide a Zealot or two somewhere else on the map, so that when you rush, you can send your 2 Zealots back in there and then start picking off probes again. In mirror matchups, workers play an even more crucial role. You do not want to lose them. Much now setting up a Nexus. Meanwhile, AnyTime going for the Robo Bay. We may see a Reaver push from AnyTime. Much suddenly realizing that AnyTime actually has more units than he does. Much perhaps expecting a few more Zealots, but I guess not, since he already scouted him. And I assume he'll be making a Robotics Bay next. He's going to need that because he doesn't know for sure what type of tech AnyTime is following. If AnyTime, for instance, is getting Dark Templars, well, then he's going to need the Observers out in time. And that's one of the main reasons why you always see that. And it looks like AnyTime actually playing in a rather defensive way. Both players basically going for the same stuff, but in a different order. AnyTime does have the unit advantage. Much aware of this, is now pulling back. Remember, Dragoons cannot fit through the small choke. This makes Dragoon rushes a little bit weaker. But wow, I hope that Much has enough units for this, because AnyTime may be able to utilize that high ground expansion to some extent. Or he may just be going for some type of a contain. Unclear now. Here he comes now, but decides to back out after seeing the 2 Zealots. Much did get his expansion up earlier. The Observer is out for AnyTime. He will soon scout his opponent, see what he's doing, responding accordingly. There are many different tech patterns you can follow in Protoss versus Protoss. It can kind of function like rock, paper, scissors to some extent, depending on which one you go. Looks like AnyTime is pulled back now and getting his second gas geyser. We do see something upgrading at the Cybernetics core. Perhaps that's Dragoon range. I doubt it's air weapons. Although it Wouldn't that be cool if we saw carriers this game? But that would not be likely. Carriers are not that powerful. Protoss versus Protoss. Here comes AnyTime's Observer. He's got to come in at the right angle, and you can already see that AnyTime has another Observer position here to try to pick off Much's Observer when it comes on the way. Much now moving out. And AnyTime making a few more gateways. This is a very by-the-book build by both players. And we have not seen Much's Citadel. He may be more interested in pumping out Dragoons, since he hasn't figured out exactly what his opponent's doing. AnyTime has a fairly good idea, however. Actually, note on the map, instead, Much decides he can expand again. AnyTime noticing that now. This is an interesting opener by Much. And it looks like AnyTime's on the move. He may be much more aggressive than we would have expected because he sees that other expansion. He doesn't want to let his opponent get that. But it looks like Much, smart player, has already positioned his army in this high ground area. But, oh man, Much probably should have engaged that at least to some extent, because now he's going to get several units picked off trying to retreat back to his base. Templar Archives for both players. Much may be going for a 4 DT drop to keep AnyTime from responding by attacking his expansion. AnyTime now expanding as well. Both players are very good at Protoss versus Protoss. Kicking off Much's Observer on the way. AnyTime is very rapidly closing in on Much. Much has to get his army in a good position here, since their unit count is pretty even. Here he comes now. It's not clear who's going to win. Looks like AnyTime has a small Zealot advantage. Zealot's dealing less damage, but at a faster rate. And the concave of Much might be too big, and AnyTime will have to retreat. Concave matters so much in a matchup like Protoss versus Protoss. Much has now gotten his next expansion up before AnyTime. A little bit of a lead there. It looks like he's transferring some probes here. It was a little bit late on the probe transferring. It looks like on the forums, shout outs to, I hope I'm pronouncing your school right, Merweather High, the StarCraft League in Australia. It's a high school. Cheers to you guys. And somebody hopes that Much loses this game because he's already defeated Boxer. He wants a curse on him. Somebody is also watching in a university library right now with a laptop. And it says it's much more fun than the work he would normally do. AnyTime makes this one. He hopes AnyTime makes this one. And somebody wants to know how many viewers. I'm not allowed to say yet because we don't have the official numbers in yet, but I can definitely say that there's a lot of viewers, and I'm excited to give you guys those numbers when this event is done with. DT at the bottom right, picking off this probe of AnyTime's. A smart move to send the DT there. This is kind of giving Much this positional advantage. Much will be expanding again pretty soon here. It's turned into a very long, drawn-out macro game. Neither player really wants to engage each other. You're at high risk of losing all of your units early on if you are to do some type of fast expoing, or excuse me, I should say aggressive expo attacking, kind of like we saw AnyTime do. It's just very difficult to reinforce your army, especially with the larger, clunkier units like Dragoons and Archons. We may end up seeing this game tech all the way up to Arbiters, which will then be used to recall, kind of like you would see in a Protoss versus Terran. Here Much is now closing in on the final main entrance ramp of his base. That's also an indicator to AnyTime when he spots that Much has expanded to the top left. Now it looks like he's just moving in here to do a few storms, but not the best storms I've ever seen. Note that, okay, Zealot legs just now completing for AnyTime. AnyTime knows that he needs to get the Templar tech down with Storm before he even begins to upgrade legs. A lot of Protoss players don't know that. I mean, it depends heavily on the map, too. But Storm's really great for defensive stuff. He looks like he's going to try to move in again. Storming the Archons, a much better Storm by much. And now, AnyTime maybe closing in for the kill. Much retreating up this ridge, but not doing a great job of keeping his units alive as he retreats. Here comes a ridiculous amount of Zealots and Archons for AnyTime, burning whatever Zealots that Much had. The unit combination may be favoring AnyTime right now, but here comes Much's reinforcements, and AnyTime's reinforcements will be behind. Dragoons dealing a heavy amount of damage to the Archons, and it looks like AnyTime may have overextended himself. Again, very, very difficult to be aggressive in a Protoss versus Protoss on this map. It's just too hard to reinforce. Now we see that the forages are coming in. Upgrades are going to play a very pivotal role in late game. Looks like AnyTime's again going to try to expand at the upper central. Oh no, excuse me, that's Much. Expanding up there. Taking the final expansion. That'll force AnyTime to expand down there as well. Now Much may be moving in because he drew his opponent's army down there. Nope, he's going to have to back out. Both players proceeding with the utmost caution. Now it looks like AnyTime's attempting to be aggressive because Much retreated in an incorrect direction. Now hoping to draw his opponent's troops down. It was all a feint. Now he's going to try to engage the army, but Much is aware that it's unsafe to do such a thing. Templars, though, trying to chase down and do some more damage, but not the best storms again from Much. Defensive cannons being made by AnyTime at the bottom. Again, because he morphed the Archon down there, AnyTime will immediately move in for the kill there. AnyTime having a few more Archons in his army, that's going to be very strong against the Zealots. Archons just melt Zealots. Now here he comes once again, and AnyTime may get an excellent surround move over here. A lot of storms being thrown down. Difficult to say who's going to win, but AnyTime closing in rather rapidly. A better unit combination, if I may say so, with the Zealots and the Archons. Much may have overproduced Dragoons, and now AnyTime can close in for a possible kill. If AnyTime can reinforce this correctly, he will be in very good shape. Picking off the Templar that's in the back, so it doesn't have enough time to recharge its energy. Once again, he closes in, but if the Archons can do enough damage to those Zealots, the Zealots will be pretty much nullified from any effectivity in the battle. But it looks like Much has now reinforced his army well enough that AnyTime will have to retreat. Here he comes once again with a Zealot Archon army. It's up to Much to have the correct unit combination to fight that off. He needs at least a few Archons in there to burn these Zealots, which are there. Now AnyTime moving in for the kill on that expansion. Much deciding not to defend it, but to instead counterattack. Will there be enough photon cannons, though? If he uses his probes correctly, even building a pylon to get in the way. Now AnyTime taking out that expansion can close in on Much. And it looks like AnyTime will hold this off. A big blunder for Much right now. Much has to figure out something fast because he's down an expansion, and AnyTime can really utilize that to get ahead. He has +2 on his units. Hopefully they'll click on Much's units soon so we can see where his upgrades are at. Zealot Archon with just a handful of Dragoons. Going to do a lot of damage against Much's no Archons in the army unit mix. Here we see them just steamrolling, and it looks like this could be a good game very soon right now. Closing in on Much's next expansion. Much retreating. Looks like the Templar don't have enough energy to storm. Oh man, this is so bad for Much. This is so unbelievably bad. If he loses this expansion, I would predict a good game. And it's down. GG! Well played by AnyTime. Oh man, I gotta say, very impressive game back there. AnyTime won based off of the better unit mixture. Both were macroing well, but in the end, it just didn't really matter that much because AnyTime knew how to balance his army better. We're waiting for Game 2 to start now. On the forums, people are saying, Jesus, give a shout out to all the foreigners in Seoul and all the foreign StarCraft fans in Seoul. We should meet sometime. Yeah, we should do something like that. I'll go to the bar or something. Someone else wants to say good game so far. Looking forward to watching the rest of the matches and the semifinals. Shout out to, I think there's numbers in this, Scotters and Cruel. What's up, guys? And someone else says, wow, a nice back and forth game by Much and AnyTime. A really cat and mouse game. I agree completely. I enjoyed it. I'm surprised that they didn't actually wait until the Arbiter tech. It looks like AnyTime just felt like that his opponent had the weaker unit mix with too many Dragoons. Dragoons are very strong early game and mid game, but once you get the Zealots with the legs and the Archons, if you're coming into the correct angles, if the Dragoons can do very little to micro against it. Game 2 on Katrina coming up soon. Much eager to come back and win again. Katrina should be a very interesting map for these two players. We see a lot of goon massing with mid-game Reaver pushing into a containment so that the third expo can be, I guess I should say second expo can be secured. I have seen players go Fast Nexus on this. It's not always that common though. Fast Nexus, probably the hardest matchup to Fast Nexus in, Protoss versus Protoss. Stay tuned.